Hello, class. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. So let's just begin with today's session. I'll share my screen. So good evening, everyone. So the topic for today's web development session is hypertext markup language (HTML). So in this session, I'll be covering all the basics of HTML, and basically this is the first sessions of the web development series which I cover. So for those of you, this session is the first one. So yeah. And talking about myself, I work as a cloud and infrastructure engineer at Larson and Turbo, wherein I basically work for Azure and AWS platforms. So let's just move in with the agenda for today. So our agenda for today would be I'll be covering HTML, and then I'll brief all of you about DNS, domain naming system, and then how DNS work basically, and then I'll be covering some other tags in HTML which every web developer should know. Talking like these are mainly the basics of HTML and CSS, which I'll be covering today. So yeah, so HTML is the it is the standard markup language which is used to create the structure of my web page, and this language consists of elements that act as a building block in the creation of the structure of the web page. Class, is my screen visible to all of you?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
visible, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much for confirming. And HTML is not a programming language. So by chance, like all of you are freshers, and if you are willing to write HTML in your resume, so like I'll give you a tip: do not write HTML in the programming section wherein you are writing wherein you're writing Java, C++. So HTML is not a programming language. Class, you should mainly make another section for HTML, or you could write front end or web languages, and then therein you can write HTML, CSS, or you can write JavaScript, Bootstrap, or all those things. It is basically not considered a good practices, and then you would lose a chance of getting your resume shortlisted in that case. So make sure that you have another section in your CVs, and then by any chance if you would need guidance, so I could share my CV also in that case. And then www World Wide Web Consortium creates the standards of HTML, and CSS mainly is used to style my HTML pages. So let's just move into the first structure of my web program, HTML program. So herein, before whenever we are writing any kind of HTML program, we have to make a declaration with doc type HTML, and this declaration mainly defines that this document is an HTML document, HTML file is an HTML file, and then we have a HTML opening tag, and then we have a closing tag. And it's like this HTML tag, what it defines is like this is the root element of any HTML page. So if you miss writing this opening and closing HTML tag, then you will not be able to write any HTML And then we have the header section of my program, which contains the meta information about HTML page. And then basically we in the header section of my program, like we write title, and then whatever we write in the title, it is basically shown here. So if I just open, so herein you can see the meeting code, right? So this information, like whatever heading you're giving in the title, so you'll get that information here. It would be displayed in the browser content. Okay. And then body contains the display section of your program, like whatever is your intention to write that program. For example, you're writing that program to create an HTML form, or you're writing that program to design to maybe to write a paragraph or to write an header. So for that case, we use the body section of our we use the body section of HTML. In this section mainly we'll write our intention. So for example, if my intention is to create a web page to use all the HTML form elements, for example, checkboxes, labels, and all those stuff. So herein I'll be writing my agenda. So for example, if I'm writing a program to add two numbers, or if I'm writing my program to maybe multiply or to divide or to design a calculator, so in that case I'll be writing here in the body section of my program. And then moving on to the headers. So we have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. These are mainly the header tags which displays the heading element, and H1 is the biggest font. Like whatever I'm writing in H1, it would be way bigger than H2, and then H2 would be bigger than H3, like that. And then P is mainly used for paragraph writing number of contents here using paragraph tags. Or by any chance, if you do not want to write paragraph, so in that case you could use this bullet prints. Or in my previous sessions, if anybody attended, how to use or how to write uh, the things using bullet prints, or how to use an ordered list and unordered list, so you can use all those things in the body section of your program. All right, so the next part for today is domain naming system. So we have phone book. So for example, if I'm searching anything in my program, so for example, okay, so what we do here is, so for example, what is DNS is, so it is the phone book of the internet. So it is something which you type in your web browser. So mainly if you type the web address which is google.com, so in that case that is forward lookup zone. So for example, you're writing the full address of your domain. So in that case it would be forward lookup zone. And by any chance, if you're writing IP address and then in result you're getting the web page, so that would be reverse lookup zone. And then we can also test all those things. You have to go run, and then you have to type CMD. And then in your CMD, what we would use is, we would use NS lookup followed by the web address to get the resolution. Okay, so what I would do is, I would copy my web address, I'll copy, and then I'll paste here. Okay, so what I have done is, I'm doing a forward lookup zone here. So whenever I'm searching for any web address, and then my search is coming, so in that case, that search is known as a forward lookup zone, and then I'm getting an IP address. Okay, so what I would do is, I would copy this particular IP address of learnovet page, and then I'll try to do NS lookup again. And then herein, if I'm doing reverse lookup here, so if I'm typing IP address, so in return I should get a web address, complete web address. Okay, I had, so this is called as a reverse lookup zone. So the command which I have to use is ns lookup followed by the IP address. So herein my IP address was 68.183.233.96. And also class, we have like you guys are students, so you would be aware actually. So we have classes in IP addresses which are class A, class B, class C, class D. Okay, so you also just mention this particular topic and study this. Okay, we have classes of, I could just show you how classes looks like. So if you would see here, like class A consists of 0 to 127, okay, and then class B consists IP address ranging from 128 to 191. Class C consists of 192 to 223. So everybody should know how IP addressing and subnetting works in web address in web. Class D is mainly used for multicast, which is mainly used for research purposes. But yeah, make sure that you have noted this particular topic, because this is not content for today. I just covered the basics to make sure that everybody is aware of this topic. Also make sure that you're knowing the subnet mask and then how subnetting works, how do we subnet any particular IP address. And then what happens here is, the trick question is, like if I'm searching www.google.com, okay, so let me just copy this. Let me just copy this, and then we can find out the IP address of Google. So in return, we got the IP address for Google, right? So the trick question is, if we know the IP address of Google, we can easily hack Google, right? So why this is not happening? Why nobody is able to hack Google server? Any answers? I just thought of asking this because this was asked by my interviewer to me. Any answers, guide? Like why, if we know the IP address, or why if I know the IP address of any particular web page, then why a person cannot hack any kind of IP addresses or any kind of web pages if we know the IP address? Because by knowing the IP address, we know the class of that particular IP address, which class it falls in, and then it's easily accessible to any kind of person, and then he might hack a site or he might hack a server. Any answers, guide, or any suggestions or anything from anyone? Hello. It would be great, class, if you are interactive. If all of you are interactive, then I could give you more suggestions of, or I could give you more tips, or simply I can come here and read the PPT or run some programs and go. Anybody would try to answer it?
Even Google have so many ethical hackers, ma'am. They are securing their websites.
So why they're not able to do it? My question is, you're correct, they have security, but if we know the IP address, then why, which, what is the thing which is protecting Google or any particular website from getting it hacked?
Server clouds and
Yeah, but I appreciate that at least you tried. So the protocol which is followed here is network translation network translation protocol is followed here. So what happens is, the moment I'm typing any kind of search here, so there is a translation which happens at proxy level, okay? So that is the reason why nobody is able to like hack any particular website. So the IP address which is coming here in NS lookup, it would go and meet the proxies which are available. So that is the reason why like there is a translation which happens in the background. So this particular IP address is visible to us, but the actual IP address which meets, it's the proxy which is having that. Okay, and we have load balancers, we have a lot of NTP network translation protocols which are followed therein. So that's the reason why we are not able to hack Google, or we're not able to hack any particular website in spite of knowing the IP address of anything. Okay. Network translation happens, and then we have private IP addresses, we have public IP addresses. So there is a translation which happens, because of that we're not able to do it. Yeah, but you can have more research in what is proxy, what is load balancer, and all those stuff. And I'll also tell you what happens is, like if we try to find out for a particular web page if it's up and running or not. Okay, so what I can do is, I'll try to ping this particular learnovate IP address, and then in response to which I'll be getting some TTL packets, which are time to live packets. So if I want to find out for a particular for a particular website if it's up and running is, so in that case I have to fire a ping command. So whenever we want to find out if a particular server or if a particular IP address or if a particular web page is up and running or not, the first thing is we just fire a ping command. Okay, and if I'm not getting any kind of response to my ping command, so in that case my server is down or there's something wrong in background, and we have to make sure and we have to work to make it working. Okay, and then if we want to find out the IP address of this particular desktop or this particular laptop on which I'm working, so we have to fire the IP config command. So we'll get all the data. For example, we'll get IP address. So this is what I was telling you. We have to know how subnet mask work, what is the default gateway. So what I told you was network address translation NAT, which is followed. Then there's a default gateway. Then we have proxies, which are working in background to secure any kind of website. So you could always make sure that you are knowing all these things in advance. Okay. Any doubts, class, in this DNS concept? Forward lookup zone, reverse lookup zone.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next topic is CSS. So mainly, class, the difference between HTML and CSS is like CSS, like HTML is basically the structure of creating a web page. To add styling or to add a color or to add more visibility to my program, I'll be using CSS. Okay, so CSS stands for cascading style sheets, and CSS describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other media. Okay, and CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. And CSS is used to define styles for your web pages, including the design, layout, and variations for different devices and screen sizes. Okay, so this is what I was telling you. Like mainly HTML we use, like we can write our program very nicely using HTML, but to add some extra effects or to add some more colors or to add some visibility, to add a good look to my particular web page, I'll be using CSS. Okay, so for example, in human body, the structure is what we can relate it to HTML, and after adding clothes to ourselves and after like decorating ourselves to make us good, presentable, like this is what is CSS. Okay, so CSS makes our web pages more presentable, and then it makes it to look good. Okay, so let's just see how do we write CSS and the syntax for CSS. Okay, so here in CSS, what do we have is we have a selector and then we have a declaration. Okay, so in the declaration section, what we have is we have a property and then we have a value. Okay, so property is what is like color, alignment, font. So this is what my property is, and we can give a value to my property which can be blue, or we can, like for example, for font size I can give it to 12 px. For example, for alignment I can give center, right, left, anything. So for example, whenever I'm writing any kind of CSS, for example inline, internal, any kind of CSS, so in that case we have to make sure that we are writing a selector and then I'm writing a declaration to my selector. And then whenever I'm writing a CSS, I have to make sure that I'm writing in curly braces. And to distinguish my property and a value, I have to use a colon. And to distinguish two declarations, like we can have n number of declaration within a CSS which I'm declaring. So to distinguish that, I have to use a semicolon. Okay, so the selector points to the HTML element you want to style, and the declaration block contains of one or more declarations separated by semicolons. Okay, and then each declaration includes the CSS property name and a value separated by a colon. Okay, and then multiple CSS declarations are separated with semicolons, and declaration blocks are surrounded by curly braces, as I mentioned you. So this is a declaration, and then inside my declaration I have a property and then I have a value. Okay, I just move ahead, and as I told you, like I'll tell you how do we write a CSS program. So let's just ignore as of now. And then we have table tags in HTML. So whenever I want to create a table in HTML, so for that I have to use table tag, a opening table tag and a closing table tag I have to use. And to create a table row, I have to use tr tag. For the header of my table, I have to use th. And to feed in data, I have to use TD, which is TD. TD is mainly table data. Okay, so the TR element defines the table row, the TH element defines the table header, and the TD element defines the table cell. And we'll also run a program for that. And the next topic for today is HTML forms. An HTML form is mainly like, for example, if you're opening any kind of let's say Flipkart, any kind of e-commerce website, or if you're opening any kind of job portals, so therein you would see different kind of HTML form elements. So for example, you'll see a text box, you'll see a label there, you'll see a button which is asking you to upload your files, or there would be checkboxes, there would be radio buttons on your on a web page. So that is nothing but it is called as HTML form. So we'll create an HTML form today, including all the form elements, for example, text buttons, labels, and all those stuff. An HTML form is basically used to collect user input, and the user input is most often sent to a server for processing, and the form element is a container for different type of input elements such as text fields, checkboxes, as I told you. And then whenever I'm creating an HTML form, I have to make sure that I'm using form, and then closing my form, and then inside that I can use whatever I wish. So the first thing is the input element. So what input element does is it makes sure that what kind of data I'm feeding it. For example, if it is a text, so my input type would be text. If my input type I want as a radio button, so in that case it would be radio button. For example, if my input type is checkboxes, so in that case it would be checkboxes. Okay, I have to write my input type as checkbox. Okay, and then if my input type is submit, for example, I have to create a submit button, so in that case my input type would be submit. Okay, I am talking so much. So text is like displays a single line of text input field, and radio mainly displays a radio button. Checkbox mainly like for selecting zero or more values. Submit button is mainly to display a submit button for submitting the form, and then button is for a clickable button, like for like if you want to put in any kind of action. So for that I have to use um, button. Okay, I hope this is clear to everyone. So the next form element is text field. So as I told you, like for any kind of text value, I have to give input type as text, defines a single line input field for input text. And then how I would give is like I have to give a label, and then like whatever value I want to put in. For example, if I have to create a, for example, how do we see, how can I show you, just 1 second. Let me just search on this page. So this is what we call it as text boxes. Okay, and this name is what do we call as labels, and this is a submit button. So I hope this is clear. So this is an input, this is a text box, this is a label, this is a submit button. Okay, so if I want to write, I have to for label I have to use label is equal to f name, whatever value I want to give for my label. For example, in this case it is first name. Okay, and the value which I have to pass for that particular value is text, so I'm writing your text. For radio button also similar, input type would be radio, and then I have to give my values for whatever, for like whatever I want to give that for my radio button. So for example, I have given you favorite languages. Okay, so you just have to make sure that you are remembering this one. Input type is equal to text, or input type is my radio. So you just have to make sure that you know this part, and then rest all is just similar. So similarly, we have submit buttons. Input type is equal to submit button. Okay, value is equal to submit. So that's it. And then we have file upload. So in by any chance, if we want to create a button for file uploading, so in that case, my input type would be file. Okay, and then it is you mainly used to create an HTML document that contains an input tag, and we use the file attribute. So let's just I hope all the sections are covered. So let me just move on with creating my first HTML program. Where is my notepad? So like we'll write our first HTML program wherein I'll show you how different headers look like. Let me just increase the font size also. So as I told you, we have to begin with writing doc type as HTML. So I'll be writing doc type HTML. And then as I told you, this is the root element for any kind of web pages, HTML element. So whenever I'm writing any kind of HTML program, I have to make sure that I'm writing an opening HTML tag and a closing HTML tag in that case. So HTML and then header section. And then inside my header section, as I told you, I'll be writing title. And then first program, let me just write. So I'm using a closing HTML tag for title, and then I'll close my header section. So as I told you, I'll be using different HTML header tags. So for example, H1, I have used hello, and then I'll close H1. Just use H2. Then I'll use H3 just to know the difference, how it looks as H2. Okay, and nobody told me like this is mainly the body section of my program, so I have to make sure that I'm creating an opening body tag. Okay.
Ma'am, the closing tag is H3.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Thank you. What we were doing in our college days was like we were so active in our classes. So the moment our teacher would make a mistake, we would shout, "Ma'am, ma'am, there's an error," and the teacher would get frightened. I could experience that now. And this I'm doing from my school days. Slash body, and then what I have to do is slash HTML. Okay, so like this program is mainly to display how different HTML H1 tags looks. H1 would be mainly bigger than H2, and the then as the number decreases, the size also decreases. So we can assume that like H1 is mainly the bigger than H2, and then H2 is mainly bigger than H3, and then similarly till H6 we can use it. Okay, and then let me just save my program. I save it as first.html. And then like we have to remember, for example, if you're saving any kind of HTML program, we have to save it with .html extension and then save, and then I can run it. These are mainly the programs I have ran in my previous session. So first, so if you can see like H1 is bigger than H2, and then H2 is bigger than H3. Okay, and then what I can do is like I can use some other tags also here. So what I'll do is like if I want to display a tag in italics, so I'll use I tag, and then mainly this is italics. And then we have to make sure that we are closing any kind of I tag or any kind of HTML tag. Okay. And then if it is bold, so then what we have to use is B. B tag is mainly for bold, and then slash B. And then for example, if I have to mark any kind of text, for example, this is my text and I have to mark it. So what I have to use is I have to use mark tag. Then this is marked. Okay, and then if I want to delete any kind of stuff, so what I have to use is delete del tag slash del, and then I can save this, and then let's just run it. So this was my italics, this is bold, this is marked. Like as I told you, if you want to mark any kind of text, so I have to use mark, and delete is mainly this one. So these are some different type of HTML tags, and then what I can do is I can now tell you how do we add links in my HTML program. So what I'll do is I'll remove this content. Maybe I can just add below this. So herein, to display any kind of link in my web page, I have to use a tag, and then I have to use href. So what a tag does is anchor tag. It mainly defines the hyperlink, and I'll be using href, which would specify my URL. Okay, so I'll use here a href is equal to and the link of any kind of web page. So herein, let me just use this particular link. So whenever I'm specifying any kind of URL, we have to make sure that it is inside a like inside the double quotes. Okay, and then this is a link. This is a link. Okay, and then I'll close my a tag. Okay, this is done, and then I can save it. Where is my browser? I can refresh it, and then if I click on this particular link, like whatever URL I have specified, so that particular web page would be displayed. Okay, now I can just what should we do next? I can just create an HTML form and show you how does an HTML form look like. So I'll just remove all these things, and then I'll change the header as HTML forms. So class, as I told you, whenever I'm writing any kind of whenever I'm using any kind of HTML form, so in that case I have to use form tag. So inside my form tag, what I'll do is, like for example, I'm creating two like I'll be having two labels, and then I'll have a one submit button, and then I'll have two text boxes. So similarly, let's just make that similar kind of representation. What I'll use is label, and then maybe first name slash label. And then class, if I do not use br tag, br is mainly used for break. So it would the next element would appear in the next line. Otherwise, all the things would be in continuation. Okay. So I'll use like for example, for first name, my input type is text. So what I'll write is input type is equal to text. And then again I'll use a vr tag, and then let's just copy this because I do not want to write it again. And this is for second name. For second name also I have used a label, and then for this also, for second name also, my input type would be text. So I'll give my input type as text, and then let's just see this much, and then we'll try to add a file after this runs. So as you can see, this is what my display is right now. So the next step is I'll want to have a button which would upload my documents. Okay, so let's just add that also. So as I told you, input type is equal to file because I want to add a file here. Okay, and then ID I can give. Maybe this IDs is mainly class if I'm saving the data in backend. So in that case, I'm using file because I do not have any link here. So there's no use of writing ID, but still let's just write it. And then name is equal to file name. And then submit, maybe to submit it, I'll write in type is equal to submit. And then I have to close my form. Just see. So herein what happens is I can click on browse and then I can select any kind of file which are there. For example, I can select this one and then file would get uploaded similar to what we see in other websites, and then I can click on submit. So this is mainly my submit button. And then what I can do is we can also add some checkboxes here. So let's just try adding checkboxes. One checkbox. I'll copy from here. I'll not write it again. Input type is equal to, so for example, if I'm using checkboxes, my input type would be checkbox. Okay, and the label for this particular checkbox would be label, for example, hobbies. Then we can save to see how does checkboxes look. So this is how my checkbox would look last. Like it would give me multiple options. So similarly, I can just add in more checkboxes here. Let me just copy paste the code. Checkbox is mainly used to if we have more than one option to select. So in that case, we would use checkboxes. Okay. So herein we can select in multiple options. Okay. So in that case, I'll be using this. And then the next program. So similarly, class, if you want to display a radio button, so in that case, input type would be radio. I can just show you. Control S, and then let's just see. So yeah, it would be radio button. Like for example, true or false. If you have only one option to be selected, so in that case, I'll be using radio buttons. So herein, what all form elements I have used? I have used a label. I have used a text box. I have used a file upload button. I have used a radio button. I have used a checkbox. So this is how HTML form elements look like. So next is we can see table tags. How do table tags look like? So as I told you, we in HTML table tags we have mainly TH for table head and TD for table data. Okay, let me just see if I have a program for that previously ran. So yeah, I can just run this. So what I'll do here is like I'll show you. So everyone knows till here. So what is this is herein I have used a CSS. Okay, so as I told you, herein I'll be using a selector and then I'll be using a declaration block. Okay, so what? Let me just open the PPT. So for example, as I told you, I have to use a selector and then I have to use a declaration followed by property and a value. Okay, so this is my selector which I have used, which is th and td. Like this is my selector which I have used, and this is my property and a value which I have given to my declaration. So like this is my property and my value is 1px, and this is like the color which I have given. Okay, so in like this is a css which I have used inside the header section, internal css. Okay, and what I have done is, like as I told you, tr is used for table row. So what are the rows which I have defined? Name, role and class. And the data which I have provided to my table is rimjim, like roll number is 11 and the class is 5. Okay, so let me just show you how it looks. So this is how my program would look like. As I told you, these are the table heads and this is my table data. Okay, I hope this all the concepts which are covered today are clear to everyone, class. Any doubts anybody is having? Any doubts, class? Anybody is having?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, class. So you'll get your assignments from your mentors, and in case if you need any help from me, and then you can easily reach out to me in that case. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am.